This is Golden Years, a roadmap to navigate retirement with Mark Cordner, the podcast.
You know, there's a name for what happens to the economy when you have high inflation, slower growth, and high unemployment going on at the same time. It basically is it's a tornado that we like to call stagflation. It's rare, but the last time we saw it was back in the 1970s. And now economist Frances Donald tells CNBC that she's worried it will be returning.
We have job gains that have moderated. We have inflation that has moved up. And that's okay for right now because the unemployment rate hasn't broken out. The bottom hasn't fallen out. One of these sides of this stagflation environment is going to break. And the Fed is not going to have the same luxury middle of 2026 as it does now to play both sides of that. This equilibrium that we're in, it's not going to last forever. Our view is that inflation is going to turn out to be the real problem. And heading into 2026, this Fed are going to have to slow down here when they see inflation rising further into Q1.
We all know that inflation could easily be the silent killer of your retirement plan and your income plan if you're not prepared. So how can those nearing retirement make sure that their income is going to keep pace with inflation, even if the stock market starts to cool off, Mark?
Well, there's a number of things we can do. I mean, there with some products, there's actually contractually assured cost of living increases that can be built into our strategies and all. I think the more important thing is really not the financial tools that we use, because a good professional will be able to devise a portfolio to outpace inflation and protect you. I think the biggest lesson we ought to get out of this is twofold. One is that these pundits don't typically know what they're talking about. I mean, God alone knows what's coming, and we've been hearing talk of stagflation for the last 5 years, and none of us really know where the world is headed entirely. And the second observation that comes from that is we have to be flexible. I mean, the ultimate message from all of this is that things change, and you and I don't have control over the world economy, and certainly don't have control over the national economy. We just have to adapt a flexible and adaptive mentality so that what comes in life we can respond to. This is why I've always been such a big advocate of what I call the two-pocket strategy. We have to have at least two pockets of money, some in the market, some out of the market, for example, that's principal protected. We've got to have different sources of assets that can be converted to income, and so we just have to think more broadly than just a traditional mutual fund portfolio. So I thank her for bringing up the importance of recognizing change. I don't know that I'm going to buy in completely to her prognosis immediately, but yes, we all have to be adaptable, and that's a great lesson to learn here.
Yeah, the double C's here, change and control. And you're right, we can't control what's happening in the economy. I don't have a crystal ball. As far as I know, you don't have a crystal ball.
No,
so,
I don't.
Really, we don't have control over all these different moving parts. But what you have control over is your income plan, your financial plan. If you're just sitting back, kind of riding the wave and going, well, I'll just figure it out when the dust settles, you're not taking control of your financial future. Essentially, you're kind of taking yourself down at the end of the day. So if you're looking to find control, to look at what your future is going to look like, despite stagflation and inflation and much more, give a call to Mark today. Again, 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. The website, mygoldenyearsroadmap.com. Economist Alicia Munnell, and she's actually the director of the Center for the Retirement Research in Boston. She is said to be one of the nation's experts on retirement. When asked what the key to a successful retirement is, she says, well, don't retire. So while admitting her advice doesn't work for everyone due to maybe health issues, she insists that working as long as you possibly can and getting the top Social Security payment means you'll have a shorter time to support yourself. What are your thoughts on this? Don't most people say we want to help you retire, not don't retire?
It's a very, very personal thing, and I think she's lived this example for her own family, because I think she's just preparing to retire now. I mean, she's a very well-respected woman in our financial community, but she has worked into her later years, and most Americans would do better thinking longer in the workforce. We really ought to be thinking, most people should be thinking towards age 70 versus age 65. It really is a function of longevity. Back when Social Security was instituted, the benefit was to kick in at 65, and life expectancy was 62 then. So the original idea of retirement was just a couple years at best. Now people are thinking 2-3 decades. And so there's a lack of purpose for many people. The studies show overwhelmingly that those who stay engaged physically, emotionally, psychologically in the world, those people will live longer and they're happier. And so she's right. Staying in the workforce is not only better financially, but it's actually better for our physical and mental health in so many ways. But physical and mental health can change, and So I would say there's two parts of that. There's a balancing act here. Yes, people should think generally about working longer, but this is a very, very personal decision, and that's why we are a sounding board for people. If people are struggling with these questions, come talk to us, and we can help you see what maybe you haven't considered before, and then make a more informed choice. If you want to stay in the workforce, if you want to slowly phase out of the workforce, or if you want to quickly jump out. I mean, there's all sorts of different ways we can go into retirement very quickly, progressively. We just got to look at your situation. Very, very personal consideration.
Absolutely. And everybody's situation is different. I was reading a Market Watch article recently that said 56% of people lack access to a retirement plan through their workplace. This is according to the Economic Innovation Group, by the way. 56% don't have access to a retirement plan through their workplace. I mean, that is big numbers, Mark. Those individuals that are thinking, what do I do? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I actually wrote a letter to the editor once on this topic because we had an elected official here at the state level. I won't name names, but she felt like too few people have access to retirement plans at work, and therefore the state should develop a program that compels everyone to participate. And I wrote back in response saying, you're wrong, because there's plenty of opportunities for people who want to participate and prepare for retirement. You can go into any bank, any credit union, any insurance agency, any investment firm, and pretty much anyone can participate in individual retirement accounts. If you don't have a 401k at work, there are things you can do outside of the workplace. You're not disabled just because your employer isn't behaving like a parent and providing everything to you. People have to take responsibility. So that would be my message to this, is we've got to shift away from the thinking that the government or some third party like an employer is responsible for our future financial security. Each of us has to take our responsibility for our own lives, and there are plenty of resources out there, such as this radio show, encouraging people to take responsibility for their own lives, and if they need help, to come visit with us, because we're happy to do that. You know, I hire professionals to do all the things that I'm incompetent at, like plumbing and anything in the house. I mean, I can barely change a light bulb. So I hire a lot of people who can do things competently the first time. It's cheaper for me, and I get a better outcome. And my wife's a heck of a lot happier when I don't screw it up. And it's the same thing with retirement planning. If people are intimidated or just don't understand, they need to learn more, well, come visit with professionals. That's what we're here for. That's why we constantly are giving these invitations. Come visit with us. Come to our free educational events. We do events at the college. We do events, we've got a 25-person classroom here in my office where we're regularly doing events, and these are all free to the community. We want to sensitize people to these issues, but ultimately each of us has to take responsibility for ourselves, and that's today's invitation. Take responsibility for your future. We're here to help.
Exactly. Take responsibility for your financial future. Again, that phone number, 702-996-4050, 702-996-4050. MyGoldenYearsRoadmap.com is, of course, the website. It's kind of interesting. I ran across something online that talked about the familiar products that took off because customers used them in the wrong way. Number one here, Listerine. It was actually obviously a disinfectant before someone started using it as mouthwash in the 1920s. That's not a shock to me. Listerine will practically take your mouth away. It's so potent. This one got me here. Play-Doh was originally used to clean wallpaper in the 1930s. It later became a toy after schools started using it for classroom projects. So I'll be thinking about that when I'm making dinosaurs out of Play-Doh with my son later this week. And WD-40 was developed to prevent rust on nuclear missiles. And that's until employees snuck some home to treat their rusty doors and joints. So it became a household item there. So sometimes the best retirement plans, they come from thinking outside the box here. So, Mark, what are some mistakes that people make when they assume that there's only one right way to retire?
Oh, wow. There's so many levels to this question. It's a great question. None of us know what we don't know. We're limited by our life experiences, and sometimes tradition is what holds people back the worst. We can absolutely revolutionize someone's retirement plan if we can get them thinking differently. And often that means rejecting some of the ideas they may have inherited from their parents or their culture. But yeah, thinking differently is a key thing. And that's where I think people really benefit from working with us, because we have decades of experience. We've dealt with hundreds and even thousands of people transitioning into retirement. And we've learned some things through that process about human nature. For example, the assumption that we're going to be able to work until a certain age. Something like 48% of people retire earlier than expected for reasons entirely beyond their control. Things like medical problems, or maybe a job layoff, economic recessions, for example, or a family member getting sick, who knows. And so we have to, again, be flexible. We've got to think differently. We can't lock ourselves into certain ways of thinking. But we can also, there are strategies that we routinely, just regularly utilize with our clients where we multi-purpose money. And what I mean by that is sometimes people think that their money can only do one job, like create income or maybe grow to outpace inflation. But with these modern products that have been developed, these financial tools are so powerful that often we can add features to an investment product that give us a backstop. They add guardrails in for things that people don't think about, like long-term care. So we very frequently in my office we'll take a limited amount of money that a person has, and we will put it into a safe place, often out of the market, because they want that security and they need that security. And then we'll add a feature to the contract that says, just in case you get sick, let's say you need hands-on care with things like dressing, eating, bathing, toileting, all these things we don't want to talk about that are in the future of 3 out of 4 of us. We need long-term care. How are we going to come up with money for that? Well, there are financial products out there that basically have triggers built into them that says, if you experience this or that kind of emergency situation, it will trigger, and we will have this larger amount of money that just suddenly blossoms and becomes available for people to use. And again, I keep referring to long-term care because that's a big one. But, another example I can think of is that's been a great tool in my own personal life and in so many of my clients is the creative use of life insurance. For hundreds of years, people have thought of life insurance just as being there to take care of the widow and orphan. And they don't think about the fact that that money that goes to the widow and orphan goes to them tax-free. And because of that, the law also allows people to access money out of certain types of life insurance tax-free while they're alive. And so we can use that to create supplemental income, much like Roth IRA income that comes to them tax-free. It also, the death benefit can multi-purpose and be used for chronic illness. In other words, long-term care expenses while people are alive. So it's not just for the widow and orphan. It can now be used for the policy owner through what are commonly called living benefits. There's asset protection issues, probate issues. There's all sorts of multiple benefits that come from a product that people thought was only good for one thing, and that was taking care of the widow and orphan. In fact, people call universal life insurance in particular, they call it the Swiss Army knife of financial planning because it has so many different applications. And again, that's just one example. I don't mean to, point to one particular product, but it's a great illustration of this idea that people don't know what they don't know. And it's wonderful to be able to share these ideas with people and let them know that, yes, you may not have been able to prepare as well as you had hoped to by your retirement age, but we can still multi-purpose your money to keep you safe. So if these ideas intrigue people, come visit with us. We'd love to share them with you. We don't work for any particular investment or insurance company. We work for the clients. We're fiduciaries. And so we're going to present whatever strategies make the most sense for their situation. And multi-purposing a limited number of dollars is something that we regularly do because most of us are not where we would hope to be financially.
Investment advisory services offered through Golden Years Financial LLC, a registered investment advisory firm. Insurance is offered through Golden Years Insurance Services. These firms do not provide legal or tax advice. Consult your own legal and tax advisors before taking actions that may have tax implications. Investing in securities involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Insurance contracts principal protection is based on the claim-paying ability of the respective insurer. None of the information contained on this website shall constitute an offer to sell or solicit to buy a security or insurance product. The information and opinions contained on this site or requested from this site are provided by third parties believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. They are provided for informational purposes only and are not a solicitation to buy or sell any of the products mentioned. Any media logos and/or trademarks contained herein are the property of their respective owners, and no endorsement by those owners of Mark Cordner, Golden Years Financial, or Golden Years Insurance is stated or implied.